To this segment of HET, right?
Yeah.
What does that stand for, Michael?
So this is our episode 3 of the Historic Elitch Theater podcast, and we are live here at KUHS Studios, and we have Holly in the house. I'm so excited. She runs Adventures in Dance, and actually my wife and I, Bonnie and I, have been doing some dance lessons with you, and it's been so fun and just a great time. So will you tell us a little bit about Adventures in Dance and everything you're doing?
Certainly, Michael. So we take a dance adventure to foreign exotic places through the art of dance. You can travel south of the border with the tango or the salsa, or you can travel back in time with the waltzes and foxtrots to days gone by. I also do everything in ballroom Latin, swing, salsa, country western, or anything involving a partner as far as dance. Then I also do historically accurate cartoon princess dances from antiquity all the way up to the contemporary or the 20th century. So check it all out at www.adventuresindance.com.
Yeah, and so with that, you sent us a message on our Historic Elitch Theater page, and that's how you and I got connected. And you were doing a dance in the carousel, and I saw the video, and so we started talking, and then we did one of our first HET talks, and you talked about the Trocadero. And so let's go ahead and start with some of the history that you've researched with the Elitch Gardens Trocadero.
Excellent. The Trocadero is really an exciting ballroom in Denver because Elitch Gardens, not to see Elitch Gardens was not to see Denver in the day. From the beginning, when they opened in 1890 to about 1917, when the Trocadero first opened, Mary Elitch would run dances there. She would run Tuesday afternoon dance lessons in folk dancing and in ballet for all the local children. She would do it free of charge. By 1917, you had John Mulhill took over Elitch Gardens for Mary Elitch. He was helping her out. And he built the Trocadero Room. This is right at the end of World War I, right? So we have the end of the world. We also have the end of an era, right? Your animal dances are now falling out of popularity. The only ones to survive, so you have turkey trots and bunny hugs and things like that, prior to the war. After the war, we totally lose those. The only one that remains is the foxtrot and say maybe your Peabody, which is now up and coming at the end of the war. So the Trocadero Room is now built. It's a safe place for people to go and dance and interact. Everybody who is anybody goes to the Trocadero Room. They have a couple of house bands that play there.
Yeah.
They have a light-up sign, State of the Arts. It would tell you what dance to the band, or what dance the band was going to play next, so you could go get a partner and dance.
And we still have that box in the theater.
The light-up sign?
The light-up sign,
really?
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I would
I'll
totally
be posting
love to
a
see
pic
that.
of that today. So if you go to Historic Elitch Theater on Facebook, you could see the pic of that box. So
that would be
yeah.
fabulous.
So it's not in working order, but eventually that's one of our goals, is to get that light box back up.
That would be really fun.
But the Trocadero, the building was absolutely beautiful.
It was amazing. It was 150 feet long.
Wow.
Just down. So it was, I think that's like a couple of football fields long.
Yeah.
But all the ballrooms, ballrooms prior to 1945 were very large, right? The Trocadero was huge. You could fit tons of people in it. So was the Savoy Ballroom, the Coconut Grove in California, and the Palladium Ballroom in New York. These were huge ballrooms. That's all that people did. You didn't have media the way we have it today. You would get together and you would sing and dance, basically. And this is the history of dance from antiquity. You get together, you sing and dance. How'd you meet the opposite sex? You get together and you have a dance, right? The ballroom dancing or partnership dancing together was a big deal because a gentleman could hold a lady in his arms. Part of the dirtiness with the animal dances was you could hug, you can get really close to them. And Mary Elitch would take a ruler and make sure people stayed an appropriate distance apart. You would not dance cheek to cheek.
So she would be on the dance floor.
Yeah,
and
she would be
making
on
sure.
she had dance hosts that
Yeah.
would go around and moderate, make sure people behave appropriately. If you
Oh.
want an example of what that looks like today, go to the Grizzly Rose and
Uh-huh.
they have dance police that
Oh.
will make sure that you're behaving appropriately on the dance floor. Mostly that you have no drinks on the dance floor and you're not doing anything that would hurt other dancers.
Yeah.
But a big deal, say for instance, the bunny head, because I know they can see us here.
Mhm.
Michael, I'm going to embrace you. They would get close enough to be cheek to cheek. This was considered too dirty, or part of why these animal dances were banned.
Oh, okay.
Right? Or Mary Elich would come in and measure the distance between people. They didn't care. She did not care if it was your uncle or not. Right? She would simply go, not too close, right? Until she passed. So so you should go along. So 1917, the Trocadero is built. By the 1920s, we have a whole new rage coming onto the scene. Right? You've kept your foxtrot. You have Rudolph Valentino hits the theaters again with the Valentino tango. At the early 1900s, the tango was all the hit, but you had Apache tango and some violent tangos. Then you have Rudolph Valentino, who is actually an expert Apache tango dancer, doing it on the big screen. Anytime they're still popular, they survive the war. Your Viennese waltzes, your Boston waltzes, they are all doing great. And then, of course, you have the Charleston, which is really exciting. This is out of the theater production Running Wild. It was a fabulous, fun, flippy, lots of kicks and things. Out of this comes our swing dances, our Lindy Hops in the 1930s. In the 1920s, you had a really fast foxtrot Charleston quick-step, which is now the quick-step of today, being danced around that integrates our Charleston. You have swing dances are starting to perk on the edge of society, so this is very exciting. Lots of invention, lots of fun things. So as you go in the theater, well, not in the theater, but in the Elich Gardens, you have another mover and shaker, which is Arnold Gunther, which is the son of, or son-in-law, if I remember correctly, of Mulville. Am I right?
I'm not even sure.
I'm pretty sure that Arnold Gunther married Mulville's daughter, and that's how we have to change names on the Trocadero or the Elich Gardens. Anyway, he goes all the way. He wants to bring new bands in, not just a house band, but live, new blood. And it was a habit of the bands as they traveled from New York to California to go to the Coconut Grove, to stop through Denver and play at the Trocadero Ballroom. As they went, you have Arnold Gunther then goes to Chicago. He's looking for how they are booking bands at these other big halls. They actually have a meeting of amusement parks owners. So kind of like we have our groups get together today, like wedding professionals or radio
Kind of like
professionals.
a planning committee.
Kind of. It's more like a symposium.
Okay.
So he gets together and he's meeting with people up there and he goes, I want to have more bands come through. So he meets with, of all things, Jules Stern, who is the originator of MCA. He goes, MCA Records actually. Jules Stern, he goes, Jules, can you book bands for me? You book bands out here in Chicago. And Jules Stern goes, well, I don't have licensing for everything else. So Arnold goes, so get licensing and send me the bands. And that was the birth of MCA Records.
Oh, wow.
So you could basically say the Trocadero Room brought in MCA Records, which later had to give up their recording license to take on doing movie productions and became Universal Studios.
Oh, that's
as we know
amazing.
as we know it today. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So you say it all is...
All ties in.
Yeah, we can blame it all on Elich Gardens. Wouldn't have all that without Elich Gardens. So now your big band craze is coming along. You've got big bands coming through the Trocadero Ballroom, right? Then we hit the Great Depression, right? Everything gets very, everyone's very poor. It's just the bottom falls out of the economy. So as a result, people are just very sad, and they do two things when they're sad. They go to the movies, and they go dancing. So they keep going dancing at the Trocadero Ballroom. We still have bands coming through. They save up their pennies. They live. They have a wonderful time dancing, all these great dances. Then as we roll into the 30s, things start to pick up. You have some new dances. Lindy Hop enters the scene, right? So that's a really exciting thing. You have Whitey's dancers out of New York. You see these in movie productions now. they're what Lindy Hopper's based their dancing on. This was a performance troupe doing all kinds of really wild things. They are, because you have this coming through, they're dancing and making movies, and people go, wow, that's really cool, I want to do that.
And they could do it at the Troc.
You can do it at the Troc. This is swing dancing was the only dance that the dance host would allow the dancers to be cheek to cheek. Otherwise, you needed your appropriate distance between dancers.
Now, were they still doing checking with
Distance.
the ruler at that time, or?
That only lasted, as far as I could read, until Mary Elich passed.
Okay.
So once she passed, I don't know how strict they were.
Yeah.
But they do start to pick up on a different radio station. I know, I'm so sorry, it's not this radio station. But you had Rockin' at the Troc being aired every Sunday night. And so all these live big bands that were coming through, like, I want to say Tommy Dorsey, but I can't remember if Tommy Dorsey actually made it through. But all your big bands, trying to remember the names of all the bands right now.
Well, the Glenn Miller was one of them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Did Glenn Miller make it through? It was either Tommy Dorsey or Glenn Miller that got drafted, and he
Well, I
himself did not
know
make it through, but their band did.
They did the movie,
Right.
the Glenn Miller story,
Right.
and that was shot here.
Right. I knew it was shot in the Trocadero before it was gone, so you can actually
Yes.
see some pictures of the Trocadero before they tore it down. So no, they continued to have big bands through. They were rotating through. It was RCA that was bringing the bands through Denver, so they go from New York to Denver to California, and it was wonderful. You have artists like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers flying down to Rio, right? And they did the Carcovia, if I remember correctly, was the dance they did, which was a predecessor to the samba.
Oh,
right?
cool.
Which was another popular dance in the 1920s, 1922, if I remember correctly. Then you see it come even more alive with Carmen Miranda in the 30s, right? The lady with the tutti frutti hat, doing her boom chicka boom. And that was another reemergence of your samba. But then you have more of, with the Lindy Hop, you break into your sophisticated swing next, which is your West Coast swing, or the white man's version of the black man's Lindy Hop. Lindy Hop changes its name from Lindy Hop as we go into war in I know we ended it in 1940, no, we started it in 1945. Or it ended in 1945. World War II started. I know it ended.
She looks at me. I mean, I wasn't around yet.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it ended in 1945.
I know
Started
it.
in 1939.
Yeah, thank you. That's when it started. That's what I thought. I'm like, I remember when it ended, but not when it started. But so as that hits, it changes our landscape, right? We were just talking that some of the bands couldn't make it through because they were being drafted, right? But we still have bands coming through. They're having a great time. They're still dancing. You've got West Coast Swing coming in that 1945. You have Latin music like rumbas and cha-chas are hitting the market. All kinds of fun, once again, coming through your movies. The movies were the big place to bring all these new dances onto the dance floor. You have your franchise dance studios or dance teachers writing manuals to spread all this information, right? So you would write it down. So you want to know how these dance trends got. They'd start, they'd find them somewhere cool, they'd write a manual, ship it off. Everybody would read it and be doing the latest and the greatest.
So does Dancing with the Stars use a lot of these former dances, or
100%.
100%?
Well, okay, so from a dance history point of view, okay? The ballroom dances as we know them today, or what you see on Dancing with the Stars, really took off around 1690 with the Ländler. This is the first dance in which a man embraced a lady in his arms. The big deal, why it was so dirty, because this is Dirty Dancing 101, was because truly all of them were banned at some point or another. But the gentleman went from, you're going from the minuet where you stand side by side holding hands. You're not close enough to have an intimate conversation with the lady. No. In the Ländler, you grasp the lady in your arms. You are close enough to say, hey babe, you want to meet me later by the crossroads? All right? Which didn't happen before. You had a chaperone. You could only have conversations in a chaperoned environment. This is what made the waltz so wicked and scandalous.
Oh, wow.
Right. So this Ländler then became popular around 1790 in Così fan tutte. And then, so this was a dirty dance of the day, right? You had English country dances, or if you think of Pride and Prejudice, all these called dances are what we now know as square dancing today.
Mm-hmm.
Then as you go into your Victorian era, you end up with polkas and waltzes and waltzes and polkas. Then you also end up with, as you go by 1857, you see the tango enter. I'm doing some research on the Spanish bolero that you see coming from this period too, to your later Cuban or danzons bolero out of Cuba.
So this dancing, is it a form of mating?
Well, that's funny. Depends on what culture at what time. Yes, out of the Latin cultures, it was your foreplay
Yes, yes.
to be able to become engaged, especially your boleros. So that was, so yes, throughout time, you could get close enough to a girl to determine if it was someone you wished to be with forever. Lots of marriages were made, or lots of people met.
So you get close and whisper sweet nothings in her
Sweet
ear.
nothing, sweep her off her feet
Yeah,
at the
and she's like
Trocadero
out there
Ballroom.
Well,
laughing
and-
twirling around.
And that's one thing that's really cool. When we did the 125th anniversary, we did a night of the Trocadero.
Right.
And we did that in the old carousel shell.
Right.
And so there was children there, and then there were parents there, and then there was their grandparents there. And I talked to some of the grandparents,
Right.
and they ended up meeting at the original Trocadero, and they're married, and then the generations, and that's part of what the theater is all about, is getting those generations together.
Right.
And so to hear, that they met at the Troc, is just such a wonderful story that, there's these happily ever afters at the Trocadero.
Right,
And
right.
I'm old enough to remember when I was a little boy looking inside the Trocadero.
Really?
Yes.
What was it like to you?
It was just
Grand.
in awe, like
Yeah.
Well,
the pic that we have behind us, that is the Troc, and when I see that, it's just absolutely on a grand scale, just beautiful.
And right outside, they used to have these curved mirrors and
Uh-huh.
this strange stuff. It's like I would just go stand there and look at everything. I didn't know what I was doing.
And
Hanging out.
it was open, wasn't it? Just
Yeah,
like
Yeah, it was a great
yes.
open space. You
Yeah.
would have no poles supporting the
Nothing.
roof, so it was a flat roof system with supports from underneath. The original floor they built was built over horsehair to create a floating floor or a cushioned effect for the dancers, okay? You would have those mirrors to reflect all your dancing and to
Yes.
make the hall look even grander or bigger,
Mhm.
which it didn't need to be any bigger, but it was
Yeah.
a grand experience. Everyone would dress to the nines. You would wear your Sunday best when you would go dancing.
Mhm.
Right?
Why,
This
is it to pick up the chicks or what?
We're chick picking. That's what we're here for. Easter's coming. We're gonna pick up some chicks. But like my grandmother and grandfather used to dance there. My mother and father danced there when they were younger. So it was a big deal to go to the gardens and hear the
Go to
latest
the
dance.
Troc. They shorten the day. You're going
Yep.
to the Troc tonight.
The
Yeah,
Troc.
yeah. You're going to the Troc to do some crush dancing, man. Okay. Which was the popular form of the Latin dances, was called crush, because you would crush as many people in to a hotel lobby and do your Latin dances, your rumbas, your cha-chas, your mambos, right? Your rumbas are a 1930s invention. Then you have your mambo hit the scene. Then you go to, by the 1950s or after the war, you now have everybody's gaga for cha-cha.
No,
Oh.
so she ain't playing fair. I mean, she charges the dance.
A diamond
Well, she
dance,
was
a
talking.
1930s,
She was
Talking.
talking about that was the big thing, right?
Yeah.
A diamond
Okay,
dance.
Diana dance. So,
yeah.
so sorry, I keep messing with your mic. I need to put my hands in my lap.
She talks with
so
her hands.
I do. It's the Italian background.
I hold mine back here.
So as you go, so by the 1930s, it was very popular to have taxi dancers. These were young ladies or gentlemen that would be paid a dime a dance to be able to dance with everyone in the hall. Right? This was a commonplace thing. You had you had your factory workers, dating back obviously in the early 1900s, that would work all day. And then when they were done with work, they just want to go out and let their hair down.
Yeah.
It became popular to treat a young lady or a young factory worker out. This was not, they were not ladies of the night. They were simply young ladies that would escort gentlemen to the theater or to the Trocadero for a dance, and the gentleman would cover all her expenses if she would keep him company for the evening.
still is like that today. I mean, come on.
But that's
Except
where
they're more
that's where you would
expensive.
that's where the habit of taking the lady out would
I know,
be
but if you're
from.
single, it's $7.29 for the night. If you're dating somebody, it's $99.29 for the night.
720. Oh my gosh, there you go.
It's
You're
either
a
make
cheap
that-
date. I need to take you out more often. But you would have your dime a dance, and this was very popular. That all your good dance or people that were desirable to dance with could charge a dime a dance.
And was that from like beginners
1930s.
to intermediate
They
to
didn't
advanced?
care what level you were.
So you could just go in and you could even learn how to dance.
Most not at a dance. Let me put
Not
it
at
this
a
way.
dance,
You would
okay.
not learn at the dance. Once you're at the dance, you want to be strutting your stuff, looking
Okay.
your best,
You
ready to
practice
present.
at home and
You would go to dance class. Remember, Mary Elich was hosting dance classes. They would have dance classes throughout the week at the Elich Gardens. This is where you would learn your hottest moves. Or you would go to your franchise dance studios, were the popular ones to go to at that time.
Yeah.
Or you would hire a private instructor that was an expert at dance.
a good-looking guy at it.
Right, of course you had to be
At 10
good
cents a
looking.
dance.
At
It's like
10
she's trying to
cents.
charge me.
For you, we'll
So
we'll
you-
add
you
it like
want-
up, baby.
So you want to strut your stuff.
Right, you stretch your stuff. You
Yeah.
went to dance classes, you went to your dance studios, you learned all the moves. And it was incredibly important to know all of these different dances. So there was a methodology that dance teachers would teach several different dances so you could survive going out to the troc.
Mhm.
It used to be said, you have to learn the waltz. If you learn the waltz, you can dance anything, which there is some truth. We cross-pollinate our steps from one style of dance to another, like the box step from the waltz, which was invented in 1835 in Boston, and then went back, and it was taken back to Europe, became the popular form of waltz as we know it today.
Now, is
So
that the one you were teaching Bonnie and I? The box
Yes,
step?
I taught you the box step.
Yes.
Yes, you got that. Which, as you go, it was re-music. Then Arthur Murray took it. It wasn't popular to do the rumba the way they did it in Cuba, which is the way you would see the international rumba or on Dancing with the Stars. No, everybody knew the box. So Arthur Murray said, no problem, because the students said, well, we don't want to do what our servants are doing. This looks like our servants dance.
Mhm.
All right? No. Arthur Murray goes, no, you're smart. You know a box. We'll learn the box rumba. And then the American style rumba today now uses the same waltz box.
Oh, okay.
Scent of a Woman. He used
Argentine tango.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
She knew what it was.
Yeah, and that tango's died like 7 times or come to near-death experiences 7 times. It keeps rebirthing. Waltz, on the other hand, never truly died. Less popular at the end of the 1800s because it was a granddaddy's dance, but then came back again. It got rebirthed.
And what's the most popular dance, ballroom dance?
Today,
The waltz? Still
I
the
would
waltz.
say, well, okay, waltz survives to today, and it lives to today because you will still use it at weddings. All right, you still use it in the country western clubs. You have 2 main styles that are mainstream right now. 3, I would call it 3. The first would be country western. Here we see a lot of that in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right, that's a big style. All of my old dances have made its way to the country western bar. So everything I saw, so say Mary Elich used to have to big band music, your Victorian 2-step. Well, parts of that live today in the country western dance club.
And that's with
And
the
a cou-
line dancing.
Country western triple 2-step
Oh, okay.
would be your iteration or the variation that came out of that. The Lindy Hop is also a variation off of that, in that like your schottisch was triple step, walk, 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 walk. All right?
And so where does the line dancing come from?
Excellent question. Line dancing, we've had variations of line dancing throughout centuries, all right? In your Middle Ages, we did it in a circle line. Okay? We had your Toss of Duchesses, your Maltese brawls, or they were called brawls, brawl the original. We would know that as Ding Dong Merrily on High today. Da 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 da. That music dates back to your Middle Ages. And you would hold hands and do a bunch of steps repeatedly, over and over again, always the same thing. Then as you go through history, so we're rocking at the Troc, we got great times. We don't fall on hard times for a long time. But let's say we fast forward to, say, the 1960s, right? We start to have some new dancing, right? We several things happen. You have Fania Records takes over and wants to do something new with the market, they go, we got Latinos we can market to. Let's do Latin music. What are we going to call it, sirs? Mambo's not popular anymore. Let's call it salsa. It sounds spicy.
It's
Tito Puente said, salsa, my dear, is a condiment, not a dance. But they said, those Americans, they can't dance on beat 2. All your mambos are 2, 4, 2, 4. Let's dumb it down for the masses. Go 1, 3, 1, 3. So your salsa and your Latin music really takes off in the 1960s. You also have, by the 70s, you have disco, right? And in the disco was a return, but before that you have all these line dances coming in during the disco era. We know the electric slide, baby.
And you're always doing the electric slide at the weddings. I know you.
Yes. I'm
loves,
doing them
she
all.
loves the line dances, and she's out there.
You go,
The
baby.
electric
Yeah,
slide.
the electric slide, right?
It never ends.
No. But that's the beginnings of all of that. As you go through, you have those line dances picking up there. But now, as you have country western dancing, didn't pick up until the 1940s, right? It was all your square dancing before that, which was my English country dancing before that, right? So you've got a batch of square dancers in Texas go, yo, baby, let's pick up that collegiate foxtrot. Let's try this in Texas. And
So that's where it began?
This is where your country western begins, right? They do the collegiate foxtrot, but they're doing it in Texas. So you know what they call it? The Texas two-step.
The Texas two-step.
So we're now two-step, and your two-step is a spin-off of the foxtrot from the early 1900s.
Wow.
And everything in your country western bar is a spin-off of something from the ballroom. But you have your swing dancing coming in, your swing dancing hit was all the rage in your 1940s, right? Everybody's swinging. By the 1950s, we have what happens? Television, right? This is a big deal. My grandfather, Robin Compton, was on the original RCA team for the very first television. TV number 1 was in my father's house with channel number 1. This is why no TV starts with channel 1. It starts with channel 2. RCA owns channel 1 as their test channel.
Oh, I didn't even know that. And I've been in television
A
for
long time. Yeah, right. So television hits the market. With the end of the war, Congress put a 33 1/3% tax on all dance halls on a federal level. Yeah, think of that on a federal level.
So we need to wrap it up. It's 11:57.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But one thing I do want to say is to tie into television, we're doing an open mic variety show that kind of the idea goes back to Ed Sullivan and his variety show and kind of where that whole started.
Right. You have Ed Sullivan. You have, actually, Arthur Murray had his dance show on television. You also had Lawrence Welk. This was a big deal, bringing music and dance still to all the masses, so everybody would watch TV for their moves and not necessarily go into a studio. You also see the downsizing of your bands. You lose your big bands and you pick up your rock bands.
So what happened to the Troc?
So the Troc was going along, but as
that tax too, right?
That tax was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful on all dance halls, but they actually survived it pretty okay. They were fine. The real killer was it is now more expensive to bring bands in, but it's not as popular. Everybody is going to rock clubs now.
Oh, okay.
And they're not coming in for big band and dancing anymore, so you don't have enough populace coming through the door. They changed as best they could with the times, but by the time you hit the 70s, everybody's freestyle dancing.
Yeah.
And you don't have as much touch dancing going on, so you cannot drive the crowds to support the big bands in the Trocadero, so they had to close their doors by 77.
And that I haven't looked up when the exact date of the closing of the Troc, so I'm not sure what that date is, but I could definitely look that up.
I know it was in the 70s. I think it was 1977. I'd have to look it up too. But so then by then they had to close their doors. They could no longer run dances and have events there, but it has to do with how the culture changed, and we went away from people getting together and touching one another.
They still do it.
Well, now with the you talk about rock, it's more of everybody jumping around
Right, like
and
you
just
jump
doing
around,
their own
right,
freestyle
right.
And do the mosh pit and carry
yeah,
Right,
then
right,
mosh
and everybody's
pits.
doing
Right,
it,
right.
touching
What
each
my
other.
students call is pogo stick dancing. You just jump up and down.
Yeah.
Right? Where you see touch dancing today is in your salsa clubs, right? In your country western club, and in your swing clubs. There's still a revival for swing dancing. We see all three of those here in Denver, and they're all great forms of partnership dancing.
So it's 12 o'clock, so tell us where we could find you once again.
Once again, you can find me in historic downtown Littleton on the super secret second floor of the Woodlawn Shopping Center at www.adventuresindance.com.
And find us at etfest.com or historiceliththeater.org. And thank you for coming in. This is so exciting, our third episode. So it was great learning more about the truck.
See y'all later.